Hey guys, Tony here. Back once again to do another edition of my record collection. What's this, number 3 or 4? Yeah, got a long way to go. Anyway, here to talk about, it's late, it's like 2 a.m. Here to talk about an album that its importance to me just can't be understated. And as you guys know, I'm just a massive Neil Young fan, and I make no qualms about it. The man, his music, his career, just something about it just speaks to me, speaks volumes to me about a lot of different things. Um, Art, life, all of it. Really, and just his music just kills me. It still kills me to this day. Um, if all I can say is that if you're a music fan and you don't know Neil Young or not really acquainted with Neil Young, you really need to be. You really need to be just acquainted with maybe even his most essential works, and I would say, his material from the 70s. Start with Decade, something like that. Anyway, yeah, this album, Rust Never Sleeps, one of Neil's masterpieces, and it's the album that closed out the 70s for him. Just a decade for him that was just 100% all great. There wasn't much he put out in the 70s that was like, below par. Maybe, not even, but maybe a little bit of the Still Young band. I don't know, but every Neil Young album from the 70s is killer. And even before that, Buffalo Springfield, everything up through Rust Never Sleep, to me, is essential. Okay? When this album came out, I think what happened was, Neil had a lot of peaks and valleys critically in the 70s. Went through a lot of strange areas, really. But every one of them valid. But in retrospect, valid. At the time, I think a lot of people were taken aback by the big stylistic changes that this guy had. You're talking from the Buffalo Springfield to his first couple albums. First album, very studio. Second album, very raw with Crazy Horse. And then, basically Danny Whitten died. You had Harvest after the Gold Rush, two very critically acclaimed albums. His work with Crosby, Stills and Nash, and then Danny Whitten died, and he basically had these strange albums. Tonight's the Night, Time Fades Away, On the Beach, very depressing. And then he sort of came out of that, and But when this album came out, I think this got a lot of acclaim. Named like one of album of the year by like Rolling Stone, 1979. And by the Village Voice, and the Village Voice, I think, named Neil Artist of the Decade after this came out. So I think a lot of people look back and were like, just amazed at, his body of work from the past 10 years. And I think too with this album basically introduced a whole new kind of Neil and Crazy Horse. Before that, it was still very raw. But it wasn't the loud, distorted sort of playing that we know now, that Neil still plays like to this day, especially with Crazy Horse. He wasn't using all the effects and all of that. But yeah, this album is just killer. And this is the album that turned me on to Neil. And I remember exactly what I was doing, where I was. It's just one of those things. Yeah, clear as day. I was at a friend's house, 14 or 15, probably 15, and we're hanging out there. We used to go there I used to go to his house after school, probably my best friend at that time, and his parents were very cool, and we'd sort of smoke cigarettes and all different kinds of things, and drink coffee and sit around and listen to music. Burn incense, that sort of thing. And I remember, I was probably the bigger music fan. And I remember we're sitting at his kitchen table, and you'd sort of have to walk down into his den, go down some steps. And he had his parents had a stereo, and there were CDs there. And I saw the CD for this sitting there. And I remember being like, what is this? And I would just look, on a CD. Now, it's just such a strange cover when you look at it, especially if you've never seen it before. That sort of very 80s, computer sort of type there. But also with this, sort of handwritten, sort of, and then this band there. And on a CD, they were very tiny. So you got this band that's just being dwarfed by these huge amplifiers and a huge microphone, and then in that lighted, looks like a drum kit there. It's just a strange cover, and I remember being like, what is this? The name Neil Young, rang a bell, but I was like, I really didn't know him. So I put the CD on, and you just, you hear the first, that riff, dang, 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 the acoustic version of it's My, Hey, Hey. And one of those songs, like instantly recognizable. I probably heard it on the radio growing up a few times. So it just had that flash of recognition, but still didn't know it. And right then and there, it was just like, what is this, And I remember we just listened to the whole album, and I was hooked. It wasn't even his CD, it was another friend of his had left it there. And I was like, you gotta let me borrow this, He's like, it's not mine, And I was like, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Let me just take it and make a copy. And I did. He let me borrow it, and I'm sure I copied it to cassette. And then played the hell out of that, I'm sure. Shortly after that, Neil was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, it's kind of unclear, but I don't really think I had much else by him. But then I saw his induction ceremony on probably MTV or whatever aired it, and they played this video montage, and it's actually on YouTube if you look up Neil Young Hall of Fame induction, and they play this short, video montage of his entire career, and it just blew me away. Eddie Vedder inducted him, but this video was what did it. All different shots, different songs from different albums, and when you look at it, it's staggering. All the different places that Neil went to. You got the trance material, you got Crosby, Stills and Nash, Buffalo Springfield, all of it. And it was just like weird, especially the trance material, and then like everybody's rocking, and up to the modern day with Rockin' in the Free World. And at that time, of course, he was, experiencing resurgence. I'm kind of glad I discovered him pretty organically, just kind of on my own. It wasn't because, he was in again. I had no idea any of that was happening. And I remember during that video, they played a clip of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young performing Down by the River on some television show. It's a pretty well-known performance. But they didn't say the name of the track, Down by the River. I had no idea what the hell it was. I figured it had something to do with the river, So I'm like, I gotta find that song, but I had no idea where to start looking. This was before the internet, So I went to my local Strawberries record store, that's what they were called, Rob, and bought a cassette, and it was Harvest and After the Gold Rush on one cassette. I figured 2 albums, this song has gotta be on there. Not knowing the guy, really has 40 albums, I just didn't know. I just kind of hoped it would be on there. So, wasn't on there, obviously. It's on. Everybody knows this is nowhere. But that cassette too. I mean, those 3 things just did it for me, And I remember just thinking a lot about how strange his career was. I never encountered a musician like that. Most of the people I were into were already broken up, dead, And it was later that same year that I saw him live for the first time. That end of 95, 96 just cemented it for me, and I'm still hooked. People ask me or think it's weird that I talk about Neil so much or that I'm such a big fan. It's just like, to me, as a music fan, I think every music fan probably has that one artist or maybe a couple or band artists that are just like more important than the rest, no matter what. And even if you don't listen to them as much as you used to, they're still a notch above. It's just, that's at least my take on it. To me, you gotta have those sort of, bands and artists that. Anyway, classic album. To me, every track is a winner. I know some people that really aren't that crazy about this record or aren't crazy about specific songs. Pocahontas, in particular, was one I remember my friend saying he doesn't like. But I think he's nuts. Every track on here is killer. Now, what's interesting about this, too, is that, punk was coming in. So a lot of the bands, the California sound, all these rich rock stars were really being pushed to the wayside, critically by young music fans. And this is sort of a reflection of that, It really is. Neil sort of, while he's not a punk fan per se, I think he sort of caught wind of the whole thing and what was really going on, and that there was something changing, and obviously, and he's one to change right along with things. If there's one thing that Neil is good at, is that it's changing and keeping up. Not so much keeping up intentionally, but changing, and that's just worked for him. And at this time, I think people call this his punk album. There's not really much punk about it. Maybe Sedan Delivery could be called his punk song. It's played as fast probably as Crazy Horse could play. But the song we just heard, really, or the one before that, Thrasher, one of Neil's best songs, just so poetic, and it's basically about how punk rock, was coming in and sort of, blowing away the old, hence the Thrasher, and specifically Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They had reached the point where it was just like they were really old hat. They weren't getting anywhere. Drugs were destroying the band, with like lines like, they were poisoned with protection. What's the lyric? It's gonna kill me now. Something like that. They were poisoned with protection. Now I'm gonna have to look it up. Christ. It's great lyrics. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think they were that good. Damn, where is it? They had the best selection. They were poisoned with protection. There was nothing that they needed, nothing left to find. They were lost in rock formations or became park bench mutations on the sidewalks and in the stations. Just really like referencing that whole thing that these guys were old, they were getting old and they weren't changing, and they, and the drugs, especially when the aimless blade of science chopped the pearly gates. It's an obvious reference to cocaine, and cocaine played a big part in CSN's history. But yeah, the Thrasher, great song. Ride My Llama, sort of a strange little song that involves Martians and getting high with Martians. Pocahontas, which we're hearing now, just to me so majestic, just awesome. That line of this line, Marlon Brando, Pocahontas, and Nades, is so odd, Look great. Just Neil has lines like that throughout many different songs that are just bizarre. Sail Away, just again a beautiful track. First side is acoustic, like we're hearing. Second side is a whole different animal. Crazy Horse, just going balls to the wall. Lots of distortion. These performances were very, very loud. But yeah, like I said, a different era of Crazy Horse altogether. It closes with the same track. It opens with only the electric version. Which, come on, if you're watching this, you gotta know this song. I'll put it on. I mean, I hate classic rock. I hate the classic rock thing. The term, it's just so stupid. But anyway, it's a classic rock staple, if you will. I mean, let me say, I've heard this played live, front row, and that opening riff is so dirty, that distortion and just in your face when you're front row is just something else. But anyway. Alright. Love it. I still love it. So yeah. What's interesting about this album too is that it was for the most part recorded live, in concert, and then just overdubbed to hell. I think only 2 tracks on the acoustic side are studio tracks, but the rest of it is from live performances. Specifically, this song is actually the same performance, it's the same performance as on Live Rust, the live album. Yeah, but overdubbed to hell. You couldn't even tell that's the same song really, unless you listened really closely. So yeah, Live Rust. I won't get into the whole concept of the concert, but a strange sort of concept that, again, doesn't make any sense to anybody but Neil. He had the road eyes, the road crew dressed up as, what are they called, the Jawas or whatever from Star Wars, with the glowing eyes and the robes. And I think one of the roadies was quoted as saying that Neil is the only guy that would ever wear this stuff for. But then again, he's the only guy that would ever ask me, you know? But yeah, the Live Rust, it's just such a great period in Neil's career. See the movie, Rust Never Sleeps, to get the whole thing, you know? But yeah, love this album. One other track that should be mentioned is Powderfinger. One of Neil's best. Again, what it's about really, nobody knows. I don't even think Neil really knows. It's just the story of a boat sort of arriving at some village, and this young kid is left to sort of defend his people, you know, and he gets shot down. But it's still just one of Neil's best. So anyway, yeah, my copy. This is my original copy that I've had forever. I got a second copy, and both still have the insert. I also have, which I just showed, Live Rust. And another thing, Neil Young, Crazy Horse live in San Francisco. So what this is basically, it's unofficial, but so I think somebody just basically ripped the audio from the movie and put it to vinyl. Again, this is the same performance that is on a lot of these tracks, and again, a couple of the same performances that hence made their way to this. So, but they're all sort of different. But between these two, it's the same thing. Live at the Cow Palace, 1978. Rob, I know you saw this performance, this tour. I wasn't even born yet. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Damn, it's fucking long.